There's so much talk about how, Twitter was the town square of the internet where everyone would voice opinions. But I don't think that's true. In fact, I think that if we want to hear what the internet has to say, there is only one place to find the profound and the crazy. There is only one place where the world speaks, and that place is Reddit. So today, we're going to check out some posts in public speaking Reddit, see what people's questions are, see what the answers are, and see if I can add anything to the conversation. Let's take a look at this one. Total shutdown and mental blackout. I get high praise after presenting. However, I go through my presentation like 50 times. Where do you find the time for that? Oh, wow. But, good for you. And I know what to say on each slide. But the first 5 minutes are brutal for me. They're brutal for everybody. It's always those first few moments. But I have a solution for you. I'll talk about it afterward. My heart rate goes wildly. My mouth totally dries up. Horrendous sense of doom and virtually full mental blackout. I've been through hours of hypnotherapy, but can't fix it. Now to the point of taking meds. Anyone go through this? Anyone fix it? If I could resolve this, I'd take more active role in speaking, but this stress is brutal. First of all, dude, wow. Good for you for facing your fear to that extent, practicing so much. There's questions I have. First of all, my big question is, how often are you speaking that this is happening to you? Because one of the things that we have to distinguish between is sincere social anxiety and nervousness to speak in front of others, because those are very different things. The other big thing I want to highlight for everyone in the room is that hypnotherapy isn't really a thing. Comment down below if you disagree, but really, if you look at the research into hypnotherapy, there has to be an inclination or almost a willingness to be hypnotized in order for hypnotherapy to work. It's one of these things that we think exists, but if you look at the literature, the research from psychology, psychiatry, you'll see that it actually, at most, you can say that you could argue whether or not it works versus it actually working or doing anything to just anyone in particular. Taking medications is never the way to do it. Just like taking Viagra for every single sexual encounter would slowly kill you because the stress on your heart alone, my friend. So what can we do instead? Before I answer, let's take a look at what Reddit has to say. Being there, the first 5 minutes are always rough no matter how much you prep. This is true. And I have a solution. It is coming. What helped me was accepting the anxiety is normal and focusing on breathing exercises right before. I have a note on breathing exercises. Also, beta blockers help to take the edge off. Beta blockers are for high blood pressure. And I don't think you want to be messing with that kind of stuff if you don't have high blood pressure. You might pass out. Not a permanent fix. Glad you said that. But it made it manageable enough that I could get through those first few minutes without feeling like I was dying. Keep presenting. It gets easier from time. This is true. This is why I wanted to ask you how often did you speak, because it does get easier with time. But let's take a little note here about breathing exercises. There is nothing wrong with breathing exercises, but there's also nothing really good about breathing exercises besides making you feel better for a few seconds. Because here's the thing. You've probably all done this. You've done breathing exercises. And what happens after your breathing exercise? Nothing. You still feel nervous, Because the truth is, for many conferences and that kind of stuff, there's no backstage. You're just sitting in the audience. So there's a psychological, but also a social component to these breathing exercises. That is not the solution. Medication will not help you. If you are getting to the point where you're taking medication, first of all, who is giving it to you? Second of all, let's take a moment to think about, and again, distinguishing between actual diagnosed anxiety problems and just being nervous to speak. 10 milligrams of propranolol. I have no idea what that does. Oh, it's beta blocker time. I know I talked about how it's for high blood pressure. I think that's one of the indications, but it says here it is also used for the treatment of tremors, angina, chest pain, hypertension, blood pressure, heart rhythm disorders. Dude, this is for your heart. This is a cardiovascular drug. This is not something that you take before you get up to speak. Could you imagine messing with your heart rate right before you have to get up in front of a whole bunch of people? That is literally the recipe for passing out, for causing an event. And how about that for making a great impression when you speak? No, don't do whatever this is called. Propranolol. God, you guys are going to totally tear me apart in the comments. Whatever, it's good for the algorithm. Does it get rid of physical symptoms? I have general anxiety a lot, but presenting gives me physical symptoms. Yeah, that's adrenaline, dude. That's the stress, the sweating. That's a fight or flight response. And we're gonna talk about fight or flight. It won't stop the nerves. It's gonna make your heart beat maybe slower, but you're still gonna feel nervous. This is the other big thing, and I'm glad you brought this up. You just need to learn to accept the nerves. What it will do is help mitigate the adrenaline dump, which causes the fight or flight response. Knowing that aspect gives you some additional comfort. But you'll just have to accept the nerves. At least I have. If you've ever taken a workshop with me, I've talked about calluses. This is something that you're getting at here. You have to accept the nerves. And there's a specific way that you can build calluses to nervousness. You're always going to feel it, but that doesn't mean it has to affect your delivery. Dude, so much of this discussion is about taking drugs. I have trained weekly. I present weekly. I'm also 55 and I have tons of training, but most of this has been team deliverables, which I never have an issue with. I bet you anything he's gonna say something about like, but when I have to present in front of senior management. It only happens when I present up, yes, but for some reason it gets worse as I age. Really? I've always fought through it and ended up well, but I am worries about the strain on my body. The weeks leading up to the presentation are terrible. Even just thing of it makes me get anxiety. So I think this guy was voice dictating. I'm genuinely curious about the type of hypnotherapy that you have been through. It's not gonna work. Hypnotherapy works in bar games and with specific individuals to prove a point, and it's when that individual wants to be hypnotized. That's kind of the big walk away. I'm actually doing research on professionals who have trouble public speaking, presentation, introduction in the workplace. But what's affecting them and what they have tried. So it'd be helpful to find out. Let's read this last one, and then I want to give you a few points from my point of view. I used to be like this. My breathing would quicken as my heart was pounding so hard. It completely went away after doing my presentation so many times. Not practicing, actually doing it to an audience. I have zero physical response now and feel completely neutral. This person has built calluses. How many times have you had to present? I think that's the big question. Now, there's two pieces of advice that I want to give you. One is what entire basis 8809 just brought up. And here's the truth. I mean, you're always going to be nervous, but what you have to do is build calluses to nervousness. And this also goes to the person who's 55 and presenting when you want her up. The biggest reason it's stressful is because of the fight or flight response. And you're not experiencing that fight or flight response outside of the stressful moment. So, for better or worse, just like any addiction, let's talk about adrenaline addiction. You're adrenaline junkies. Let's talk about crackhead, You build a tolerance to that physiological response. You can also build a tolerance to your fight or flight response. In other words, you can build a tolerance to the nervousness you feel when you're speaking. You build calluses. How do you do that? Practicing 100 times isn't gonna work if the practice is safe. If you're in an empty room, looking at your notes in your office, and you're practicing your presentation, you're wasting your time. Because unless you can replicate the stress, the nerves, it's not gonna do anything. This is why you practice. All of you guys who are practicing so much and you still get nervous and you have all this anxiety is because you're not experiencing the anxiety, and that's the thing you have to address. But beyond taking a bunch of drugs, what can you do? It's actually pretty easy. I'm gonna tell you right now, the secret to building this calluses, to getting used to the nerves, is to practice with nervousness. And there's 3 ways you can do that. I recommend doing all 3 as a progression. The first way is you turn your camera on and you're not allowed to push stop. You're gonna push record and you can't push stop. You have to get through your whole presentation. You will stumble over your first few minutes every single time. And you're gonna wanna start and restart. 9. No, you can't do that. Do that a few times, it'll stop bothering you. You have a little calluses. Second, you gotta try and do it in front of someone. You ask a friend, a significant other, anyone, you say, hey, can I practice in front of you? They have to say yes. And this is what's gonna happen. They're gonna sit there and look at you, and you're gonna look at them, and they're gonna be like, okay, go. And you're gonna be like, okay, hold on, give me a minute. Do that with that friend a few times, it stops happening. Try it with a few friends, you got more calluses. The last way, and even though this is a progression, you can do these independently, one or the other. This is how I practice. I always practice in places where other people can see me so that I feel self-conscious. Dude, if you're like practicing in the cafeteria, in the hallway, even if you're in a meeting room and you lift up the blind so people can see you pretending and talking to yourself, walking down the street, even if no one is around, the self-consciousness you are gonna feel, even me saying, try and do your speech and walk around the block, just think about that. That is making you anxious. Practice with that anxiety. You'll only have to do it a few times. And the more you do it, the more calluses you build. So that on the day of, yes, you're gonna be nervous, but you'll be used to the nervousness. Your body will know what that nervousness is and it will not impede your thinking. So you're not gonna blank. You're not gonna forget what you're gonna say. You will have built calluses so that the nerves are there, but they do not affect your delivery. But what if I'm wrong? Is there something else we can do? Yes, and this is a strategy for those first few minutes, because all these Reddit posts have really been talking about it's just the first few minutes. It's just the first few words. That is where we all stumble. Those first 5 minutes. Well, here's what you do. Whether it's a meeting or a presentation, start by getting your audience to discuss something. Answer a question, give me an opinion, find an example, choose between these 3 things. That's all you have to do. If you get in there and they introduce, hey guys, before we get started, quick question, and it can be on a slide or you can just say it. Can you all take 30 seconds and discuss this question, discuss this topic, try and answer, give me an example of this? 3, 2, 1, go. This will allow you to start speaking. You'll get that stumbling moment. You're standing there, you got the nerves out, and minutes are passing while people are talking. You can either go and check in. Then you do some applause to get the attention back on you, and you say, So the reason I wanted you to discuss this is, and then you move on to your next slide and your content. Get your audience to do something right away. It'll get the nerves out, it'll take the focus off of you, and you'll get used to being on stage, and your adrenaline will go down. The first few minutes are done, and you can enjoy the rest of the presentation, because that's when you won't feel nervous anymore. Okay, gang. This was my first attempt at reading some Reddit stuff and giving my opinions and analysis on things people are saying in the world of communication. If you liked this style, you want to see me critique some more Reddit stuff, give you some more public speaking tips, please like this channel. Leave a comment. Tell me something so I know I'm not screaming into the void. The more I get, the more I'll do. See you next time.